Hello everyone, I'm Xiaogang. Okay, we're gonna start writing the death skill. Death is a very complex skill. Why is it complex? Because when you die, you need to handle all the logic before and after. You need to make the player lose control, then play the death animation, and at the same time, handle the player's rebirth skill. So it's going to be a bit challenging. We're gonna start working on it. And for this death skill, our current health value, the health value, it changes at this point. That is, when the current health value is not equal to the previous health value, we can run a test for everyone. Because after it comes in through JEC, we can set a breakpoint. This is relatively simple. It should be this project. Let's open one. Okay, because we definitely are. Set a breakpoint like this. Then after entering, here it must be through damage. Display sets health. If our health changes here, then it must not be equal to 100. At this point, then we can broadcast, but note that this is a server broadcast. Actually, when you actually receive the broadcast on the client, it actually receives the broadcast here. Here, we can set a breakpoint. Here, if its health value changes, right, it will be here. You see, it becomes 90. As for death, it actually mainly changes here. That is, whether it is already, that is, if it hasn't died yet, and now it dies, it will trigger equivalent to our death. It will only trigger once. It won't trigger repeatedly. It will only die once, because we will have a equivalent to having a variable called first death. This place is out of death, isn't it? That is, whether it has exceeded the health value. If it has exceeded, we consider it bad. But some of our skills can pull it back. But we won't consider that for now. Then we won't worry about this part. We'll remove all these breakpoints. Let's press again. We'll cancel all of these. Okay, and here we also turn it off. Then, in other words, if we are on the client side, it will trigger this delegate in the UNVP. Trigger the out of health delegate. If we are on the server side, we will trigger it on the server side, the out of health delegate. As for this delegate, we know we wrote a health component. Our health component is here. The health component in our health component. When initializing the init ability system, we will here out. That is, we write the health overflow event on the attribute set. This health overflow event is written here. We haven't written any code. The code here is very important. Let's set a breakpoint here. Set a kite. Now let's kill this character. Now let's move it over. Okay, our damage is a bit low right now. We'll make some high damage skills later. Otherwise, this takes too long per hit. Okay, now it's enter. After entering, it will trigger this out of death here. We'll activate the death world here. Alright, we'll ignore this for now. Okay, actually, because this is the client side, it will only be activated once here, since we have this be out of death thing here that controls it. So, both the server and client will enter here. But because death is a very special technique, it must be triggered by the server. So we have a flag here to control it. Trigger this through the server. Now let's start writing the code here. So how should this code be written? First, we need to make death into a skill, a mobility, and in this project, we didn't actually make the beast into a skill, but we made death into a skill. Then how do we write this? First of all, we definitely need this ASC thing to exist. Only then can we proceed to the next step. Then we also need this. What is this? This is a GameplayEffect thing. Although because we might need to read some data. For this death of ours, how exactly was it caused? Was it caused by the player hitting it with a fire skill, or was it caused by the royal hitting it with an ice skill? For different types of death, we can make it into a melting effect, or something like that. So when we pass the death event, we may need to read this memory, these parameters in the space. So at this point, how do we activate death? Then we use the game event does. This game event triggers the death. That is, we activate the ability this time. It is activated through the game event rather than manually activating it. So we must. It is through a trigger, through this event trigger method. So we must handle the death event with a special treatment. Then we will show you this special treatment shortly. First of all, so regarding this event, but if you want to implement death mechanics, that is, whoever scores, you can also write it here. We'll ignore this, okay? Because in Leva, there is a message plugin here to record this death event. We haven't had one recently. Here we'll first prepare a payload of gamma event data, because you need this data structure to trigger the event. Then here, we'll assign the tag for this event. This tag is this tag. It's the one we defined earlier. So it's the this tag used by Legend Gaming, right? Then here we need to take these for some parameters. I'll just set them directly. Actually, these parameters. That is to say, this who is it? Who caused it? Who is the target? The target is ourselves. Ourselves. Who are we? We are the object that owns our ASC. Then you can also select some optional object parameters to include. You might need this later. And most importantly, there are also some tags. And then there are the damage magnitudes, and so on. And at this point, he wrote this here. That is, he made this is a sliding window prediction, a prediction thing. We'll just ignore it. Just write it down here. We won't go into detail about this sliding prediction window thing. Anyone interested can light it to Advanced GS Learning and look into it further. Then at this point, we take a trial sword and send it out. Send this game event to a practice. After this practice is sent in, it actually needs to find whether your ASC has a corresponding tag for such a GA ability. So how do we write this? We need to close the original project first. It should be. Let me check. It should be this project. Let's close it. Okay, now we need to write a new ability. This new ability, it's called def, just like our jump. Because for this kind of ability, it's better to write it separately. If you use general logic to write it, it's not very convenient. Okay, now we trigger this event on the server. Let's change this name here. So first of all, we still do the same. We include our own GA's flayed. Then include the reflection file. Then we do a forward declaration. We might use these structs. Then at this point, we need to write the class annotation. This game ability is specifically used to handle that. Its activation is very special. It must be activated through this kind of game event. Next method, activated in this way, and cannot be manually activated directly. But you can design it yourself. However, in our case, according to our gameplay requirements, we do not design it that way, and it is an abstract class. Because we must implement it in Blueprint. Here we just need to define some things. Some logic that we need to use. First, we need to write its constructor. Then we create this constructor. Okay. In the constructor, what do we need to write? Actually, we need to write something like this. First of all, let's include these header files first. These header files probably don't need an introduction. Everyone should be familiar with them. Then we change this strategy. This doesn't need to be changed. This is the default, but we need to change this because we are only on the server actively doing this. So this ability of ours, it should come from the server gravitational body, but on the client. It also needs to run, so we need to use this server gravitational body, such a strategy, execution strategy. And if we are a CDO object, that is, if we are a default object, we need to, if we have this flag, this thing, that is to say, this place, it should probably have some enums like this. If we are CDO, on this class of this, it will have such a tag. Having such a tag proves it is the default object. Then we need to let it add a trigger. That is equivalent to registering an event. Then the trigger tag corresponding to this event is this tag. This tag is the same as the tag we sent earlier. It is the same as the tag in this processing. This way it knows when it handles the game event here, it will look for this game ability. So on this ASC of yours, whether the death ability is mounted, and it needs this trigger to activate. This is inside our flay. This place explains it to you. That is, whether this ability can respond to an event sent over, thereby causing it to activate. Then here we register this trigger. That's what it means. This part of ours is a bit fancy. Let's refresh this part. Okay, let's continue writing below. Actually, the logic later is a bit complicated. But once you can get it running, you'll feel that it's actually written very way tightly interlocked. Because of this logic, I'll just tell you directly. It's the def logic in Lyra. So you can rest assured about this part of the code. It is fully backed by commercial endorsement. Okay, so these are two events. When we activate the ability and end the ability, first we'll just create it like this. We won't write anything for now. Okay, and here are two more events. When we actually start dying and finish dying, ignore the red arrow. It's fine. Then we have a protection variable here. That is whether to enable this automatic death trigger function. That is, sometimes you might want to delay the death. That is, you might give it a, for example, even though it triggers death, its death process will only start after 5 seconds. Then we proceed with the death flow. And during those 5 seconds, it can still continue to take damage and perform a series of actions. All of these are possible. So let's go back to this place. When we activate the ability, what kind of things are we going to do? First, let's follow our usual routine. This actor info must exist. Let me check if I missed this here. Including the same components, I shouldn't have missed it. Then at this point, we can definitely get our ASC. Because this object is not dead yet, it hasn't perished, so we can definitely get the ASC prime. Then at this point, we're going to prepare a tag. Because this death is actually quite special, that is, many times you can do the kind of attacks that can be launched during death. For example, self-destruction, or performing some kind of skill for everyone after death. So we prepare some tags. Because some abilities may be attached with an ability to survive after death. Then we use ASC to cancel all our abilities. So we can take a look at this function. This function means there are 3 parameters. So this means canceling all abilities. When a specific tag is present, the first one means if you have this tag, it will be canceled. The second one means if you do not have this tag, it will be cancelled. And this specifies which ones to ignore. That's roughly what it means. Okay, right. And this directly cancels all of them. Right. And only this one is ignored. Will not be cancelled. This cancels the specified ability. Okay, so here it means it is to consider that you might have some death tags. The death ability needs to be activated. So here we only cancel, you know what I mean? That's the idea. Okay, then here we need to set our ability as non-cancelable. Because if some other ability cancels our death, such a design might cause conflicts. In our project, we make death non-cancelable. Non-cancelable. And if R2 star days is enabled, then first we must set R2 star days to true. Set it to true. That is, as long as we die, we just let it go up on its own. Then we let it start executing death. And at this time, we simultaneously call our parent class's actability. Okay, when our ability ends, we directly check it. Then we just let it perform the dance. Okay, then here we are. Remember to adjust the endability of the negative class. Good. So, through this ability, when we stop dying, and when we finish dying, what work do we need to do? At this point, we go back again. We need to go back and modify our health component. We write code. When we start writing code, let's look back at this again. Because this part is particularly convoluted. This process is especially convoluted because you will notice we have our death state here. Many of our scenes are down through this death state. For example, after we change the state here, it will detect the change. Then from no death, it becomes starting death. Then it will call it start death. Call the life component start death. Then when the life component starts death, it will then call the blueprint begin death interface. Right, so it's roughly written like this. Then when we complete the death through our gameplay ability, because when our gameplay ability is in the understate, for example, when our animation finishes playing, then it might have finished this death. Actually, we only need to call back from the combat ability. Modify this enum here, then the help component will listen to it. So everyone must understand this sequence clearly. This sequence has a certain level of difficulty because it is not written together. They are separated from each other. Then at this point, we go back to our gamer ability. Obviously here, we only need to change this state. We just need to modify it here. Okay, then this fellish death. It is called here in under ability. When is this under ability called? It is called in our blueprint node. So this part is extremely complex. Because why is that? Because this here, it also has two death proxies here. So this logic is quite complex. I set a breakpoint in a moment and explain. But setting a breakpoint here is actually not easy because a blueprint and C++ are mixed together. Okay, so we finished explaining this death ability. When death begins, when we activate the ability, ET will call start death. Here, when we deactivate the ability, it will call finish death. Now let's compile it. But this ability hasn't been registered yet. We need to register this ability. It can then be used. We have only defined it for now. The compilation should succeed now. No problem. Good. We compiled successfully. So we also need to register this ability. When we register it, do we remember where the ability is registered? It is in this character's location. We remember we wrote a something like this, a configuration area. There you might be confused. This thing is not used at all, right? It is indeed not used here. But the next things we will use. We prepare a death ability called death ability classes. It is our death ability. It needs to point to our death. Blueprint class. Okay, then here we need to prepare a handle because after we register, we need this handle, right? I remember whether it should be an underplay. This person. Then here, actually during underplay, when we destroy this object, we can go ahead and cancel all these abilities for it. But if you don't cancel them when it is actually destroyed, it will also cancel all ability on its own. That should be the case too, okay? We'll ignore this condition. So here, when we handle it here, we need to note that we are registering abilities in batches. For this death, we need to handle it separately. So here we have the CDO object for death. Then we go to create a spec for it. After creating the spec, we go to specify the source object. That is on the spec cell. Fight it, parameters inside it. Then we inject this ability onto it, and then save its giant cake. Then this death ability can be done. Then we build here. Okay, now let's start it up. And because the death ability is quite complex, we'll just finish explaining it all in one go. Otherwise, stopping in the middle would be uncomfortable. Then, in the game, for this death, it should be a general ability. We should find a place to configure it. Concar the death animation for it, but we don't need to do this for now. Let's find this. Okay, we have this here, right? Let's give it a G. This. Okay, after opening it, everyone, please take a look. You will notice that there is an extra trigger here. Of course, you can add it manually, but we hope to add it using the C++ method. Then here we need to specify this tag. This tag, we should call it abilities, ability. Type turns down as to change. Here I should add, right? A bit decay. Same, because we haven't written this tag yet. Actually, as for recommendations, everyone should agree. Find a place to write all the tags in advance. Otherwise, adding them in advance can be quite annoying sometimes. Okay, at this point, we need to pay attention. We need to disable some abilities. Of course, here, we definitely need to take this type action. Things like jump attack. Disable all of them. The main character's abilities are the same, okay? Then here, let's check again. Basically we finished modifying it here. And then we mainly need to turn these off because when we activate, it actually goes through this activation. That is, activate ability from event. So after we activate and enter here, we need to open this break event data. Where does this event data come from? It is sent from this place. From our health combo. We need to have a bound function, health combo all here. We sent it from this place. this unter data, after it is sent from here, it will have a target. We need to save this target. This target needs to be saved because this is essentially us, the object that died. And actually when we die, we can do many camera perspective transitions. But we won't write it here. These are all structures within Lyra. We control it here. If you study it later, go take a look, okay? Next, we need to trigger this death tag. But currently, we haven't written this death tag yet. Let's check if we have it. No, indeed, we don't. Let's add it with this tag. We'll just write 2 random ones for now. Later, you can write it yourself. This place can trigger some attack effects if you need to. Then we haven't talked about this yet. Then, when we clear this tag here, we need to pass this parameter. As for this parameter, we might need to check it. We connect this event here. And then, this event is the contents parameter. And for the match tags lam, it should be this event's tag. It should be this name. This is the orange tag. And for this augury source tag, and this target tag, that should be these two. Okay, and then as for this provocateur, we can pass it like this. Next is the source object. Okay, then you can also do many other things. Let's just write it like that. Just connect it. Because this tag, we won't write this game queue. We'll just do it here. And then, what should we do next? Because we are about to die here, we still need to learn, essentially, this respond logic. We'll learn this respond logic later. Let's leave it empty for now. We need to set a time here. That is, after how long this thing has been triggered, we consider it as having completed its death. Here we need to set a time. This is a wait design, such a time. For this time, we gave it a variable. Let's set it to 5 seconds. Okay. After 5 seconds, when it finishes, we give it under ability. After 5 seconds, we consider this ability to have ended. Then it will complete the finish. Then remove the death completion from the health component. Okay. So that is our J. Then we go into our character. We go into our character. Then here, we should have an XT. We are missing one. So within this ability, we need to specify our death ability. Okay, after specifying the death ability, we need to make some settings for this starter because we want some effects. For example, some effects like the doll, we need to implement. And first of all, this is a default. Let's just add a montage like this. Let's promote this montage variable. This montage, because we need to specify in the subprop, since this is a default class, we need to compile it before we can change it. Okay. For this animation here, we need to find this. Let's find one here. It should be in the character. Hero first animation, we find this. Hey, it's this animation. Then we create a montage for it. Can animate montage. Okay, then let's move it into our character. Then remove this one. Then move it to hero. Move it in again. Then we take this. Pay attention. When we change the name here, we need to check. Because this animation, it is an animation like this. You will find that is the animation slot is default slot. If your animation blueprint does not have it, I emphasize it again. If your animation blueprint does not add a slot, you won't be able to play it. If you don't have this slot, you won't be able to play it. This is common knowledge, but sometimes people might miss it. Then back to our topic here. For this, we can leave it unspecified. In the subclass, we leave it unspecified. Okay, then here we need to add another one. Something like AI perception, but we might not have it. But normally, you should have this. And here, we need to disable its perception. That is to say, if we are making an AI behavior tree, we need to disable the perception here, cancel it, then select here, AI sense site. But we don't have it. Currently, we haven't done it yet. This site perception part, we are only leaving this here to remind everyone. You need to do this. We make a random one. Because we play a montage, and then if we execute it immediately, the ragdoll, a problem will occur. That is, your animation hasn't even played yet. This ragdoll, this character will collapse. Everyone should be familiar with ragdolls. That is to say, everyone should have done it before. It is still relatively simple. I will paste this code directly here. I need to explain it to him. First of all, regarding this mesh, you set its collision presets. Then select this one, and here we gave it a we promote this to a variable. That is a control bone and an impact force. As for the parameters here, everyone be sure to write them down. These are all relatively simple. This is to get its final velocity, just to apply a force in that direction. Then we need to set the parameters here. This is Paris. As for this Paris bone, everyone can take a look at roughly which position it is. I don't need to talk about this Google thing anymore. Okay. You can open the animation blueprint. Open this Paris. Okay, we can find it inside the control. We find this Paris Google right here. This is his Paris Google. Okay, and this part is a ragdoll to activate the physics, right? This part is to give it an impulse. Okay, then after we finish this function, go back to our ungraph, and then we code it here. This okay, then after we do this, we need to configure it on its subclass pair. Not yet, but if you configure it on the parent class here, it's equivalent to having a default value, which is also fine. Then we can find, let's take a look. Its parent class should be here. As for this variable, under the montage, we need to change its name. This will take the instrument type. We might need to save here and compile it. Okay, good. Alright. Okay, so at this point, we should be basically done. Then let's do a quick test. A more detailed explanation of this process will be covered in the next few sessions. Because it involves several things. You can see, we should be able to successfully trigger this death here. Okay, you can see, right. Okay, alright. Then we'll cover the rest in the next lesson.